That's the way they all became the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. That's the way they became the Brady Bunch.
In a sense, I guess what I'm saying is there needs to be a recognition of the naturalness, however it flows. Maybe this is a Taoist kind of philosophy.
Yeah, I was about to say, sounds like Taoism.
Yeah, to also incorporate that aspect of what is the natural flow and how do we enhance that and magnify it and cut and paste and select, like you were saying, Kurt, and emphasize that flow that's always there.
What kind of...
I think a good way to try to recognize the flow that's always already there is to sort of deconstruct the idea that there really is anything like manipulation, at least as we normally think of it, as like some a human mind or intelligence that's over and above some sort of tool that it's using to get what it wants done. Because really all of our technologies have always changed us way more than we have used them to change, right? Or at least they've allowed us to change the world because they've changed us first. So this idea that science and technology have ever really been about pure manipulation, I think it's always really been that the technology was manipulating us, you know? So it's the reverse of what we would first suppose. And you know, I think this for language too. Like sometimes we worry about overly abstract language because it becomes some sort of, we think it's like an artificial overlay for something primal and more real. But I think what's really powerful about language is that that's not this. There's nothing underneath it. It actually creates what it says is there. You know, so you know, we talk about map and territory sometimes, but what if there's only the map?
Well, the thing about language is it might be... Okay.
I might be done.
Or do you okay. When you're talking, it just, language seems to reveal itself as something that might have us rather than the other way around. It's very convenient to think that we are the of language rather than language going through us, as we're a medium, we're a neuron, but language is that mysterious moving element that is.
Yeah, I don't know how I know.
Not
language
confined.
knows somehow. Language thinks me.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of that get through?
Yeah, so I think that's where you're. Yeah, it did, some of it, but yeah, that's something that popped up.
I think there's a problem here, or real sorry, is so what we're talking about is sort of a realization. So it just so happens most of us, that realization comes out from the arts or whatever. That, you know, language is that thing that it is the thing because you realize that as you're doing it. It's just that sometimes language makes people not realize it, so then it's not the thing, even though they are doing the thing. They just, you know, the whole enlightenment thing, you just don't know it. And go on. So it's language just has a tendency to make people not see it as a thing, a reality. But if are using the language, then it totally is what you were saying. You know, at first I kind of didn't disagree, but then that jived, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's most clear when you have the distinction between. I mean, I would like to think that there are degrees of, or we could say God persons, in which God is fully manifested inside of the human being. And there are numerous examples of that. I think they're still around. I don't think that's an old historical reality. But my point is that when those realized persons speak, everything that is contained within their being is going to be and there are degrees of it. So for a seeker who's maybe in the books and hasn't necessarily attained to those states, however you want to put it, then it's not going to be as clear, because there's a lot of conceptual linguistic things that can get in the way and cover things and make things more murky when they shouldn't be, you know. So I don't know, what do you think about
It's
that?
sort of like a double-edged sword. Adam had the power to name all of the beasts, but at the same time, the tree of knowledge is the thing that made him feel naked. So we have this sort of ambiguity that knowledge, language can be a manifestation of the ultimate right here, because it is that. It is reality. But then it can also, because it is reality, the idea that you are separate is also at least relatively real. And it's like a stable illusion, so to speak. So there's so much responsibility that comes with, language is reality, because, well, then what you think is real, and you have to think carefully about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the tree of knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So the fall happens when Adam and Eve, I think, learn to speak and then start thinking they somehow own or possess speech, when really it's a gift from the gods, so to speak. And language is both, I think, it has an expansionary and a contractive quality, or an affirmative and a negative aspect to it. And language has both of these aspects to it as well. And maybe the problem with language, when we get lost in abstraction, is if we try to make a system based only on negation, or a system based only on information, get the reality itself, and so language itself, to be in contact with the truth, have to recognize the polarity of the affirmation and the negation, to be able to play in space between, which I think is what poetry does, or paradoxical statements where there's no real illogicality about it, but somehow it's also it seems to contradict itself, and yet in so doing reveals. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the fall, in terms of knowledge, good and evil, is not being able to recognize that good and evil, or affirmation and negation, have to be always sort of playfully related to when one is trying to say something, so that everything you say can always also be its opposite. Question.
If let's play a game of self, just go with me, and it's an academic self alienated from the mainstream, how do we get that academic self? If this is some kind of spawning grounds for a think tank, hasn't that been the big problem? Is the big ideas are still not infiltrating the main vein, the what's popular, because what's popular shapes, the physical reality out there. We can talk these ideas here, and we can go to the institutions and surf those waves for a bit, but everything else in between, the medium, the matrix of reality, physical reality that we have to navigate through, is still being covered by these popular pop culture, fast food, practical, bottom line, deep esoteric stuff. The deep art is not really championed like it should be. What do we do? What do we do with all this in terms of getting the academic self back into the mainstream, or we're in the mainstream? Is it ever supposed to be in the mainstream?
That's a really good question, because it seems like there's always.
I think a community of artists. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, it seems like it's always been semi-separated, but when it's not separated, it's used for those in power to remain in power.